I bet this wasn't a video you were expecting, huh? Everyone probably figured the series was going to finish this week, and I wouldn't mention some of the other games that I never purchased, but of course, I had to sneak just one more video into this series. Think of it like me sneaking a big fuck you into the YouTube order every now and then. Now, many of you watched each and every video in this series. You watched me play some of the most popular games along the way, like Call of Duty, Mass Effect, or whatever. You also watched me play some of the most obscure shit, like Marvel Ultimate Alliance and Heavy Rain up in this motherfucker. But one of the most common questions I see in the comment section is, why didn't you play such and such game? Or, how come you played this game but not that game? And some of these questions are legitimate questions because I have skipped out on a number of high quality series over the years. Yet, I ended up playing crap like Need for Speed, Pro Street, or SoCom 4. So before the Goodbye PlayStation 3 series concludes this week, with the final 5 videos starting tomorrow, I might as well give a rundown of the list of some of the most popular games I skipped out on for those who want to know the reasons why I never played these motherfuckers. Now before I begin, there are a few things to note, and mainly it has to deal with games I won't talk about. Certain games I've already gone into detail about, like Black Ops 2 or some of the Need for Speed games. Sequels or prequels to other games that I already owned and did a video on, I probably explained them in those videos, such as God of War Ascension or Crysis 3 or whatever the fuck I got into. I made my opinions known about those games, so there's no reason for me to go into that in this video. So I'm gonna stick to the series that you haven't seen on my channel in detail. Now, I could be a dick and scour YouTube for videos from other people to post on my channel, but I wasn't about to do that shit. Especially considering some of these games are gonna get about 15 seconds worth of fame, and then I'm gonna move on up in this motherfucker. So the video in the background is gonna be some of the remaining ghost footage that I haven't gotten around to doing a normal commentary on, so we're just gonna throw that shit out there so I don't have to worry about people asking me why I didn't use different footage. So for the 3 videos that I chose, I actually wanted to post them for separate reasons with their own commentaries, but as I said before, each one just ran out of time. Now I'll give a little detail on the next 2 when they start, but the first one you see in the background came from my free-for-all adventures that I had. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe this is the biggest ass-kicking that I handed out when I was doing the challenge, and I finished 30 and 4 up in this motherfucker. And obviously, I did this challenge back when Christmas Noobs just got the game. So it's a bit unfair, but you know what? Fuck it, killing noobs is just as entertaining. But anyway, let's start the party, and I'm gonna get into a few genres out of the way first just so I can get rid of that shit. One of my pet peeves was old PlayStation 1 and PlayStation 2 classics that were released as downloads. Think of Final Fantasy VII or Shadow of the Colossus or whatever the fuck. Great games, amazing games back in the day when they released, but that's my issue. I already have those games. I don't care about Final Fantasy X being remastered or whatever the fuck they're doing. Meanwhile, they still left that annoying Titus and Yuna laughing scene in the game. So basically, it was just an HD update. But anyway, I still have a PlayStation 3 fat that I can play all my older games. I have the original shit that has the old PlayStation 2 engine. I could have just busted out my older games that I still have in my collection that I never threw away. I still have Final Fantasy VII somewhere. I still have SSX Tricky or Metal Gear games. I wasn't about to buy them all over again for any price. So all the older downloadable games, I skipped because I still have a console that has the ability to play all my originals. Although I can't lie, I had my finger on the trigger on the purchase button for Final Fantasy VII. I just didn't see a need to buy that game, since I could have just dragged that motherfucker out of my storage unit. Whatever, man, I wasn't about to buy that motherfucker. Anyway, indie games. I know there are plenty of incredible indie games out there, but it's just never interested me. To some people, they enjoy them. To me, I'd rather blow shit up or race cars or something like that. So games like Minecraft, Journey, The Unfinished Swan, Going Home, Braid, Limbo, all of those games were never even considered for a purchase, regardless of how good the scores they got when it came to the reviews. I have nothing against indie studios, I just prefer AAA games over indie games, that's all. And the more I progress into the video, the more you will see there are just certain types of genres that don't appeal to me. It's not that they're bad games, it's just not my flavor of gaming. So now that I got the full genres out of the way, let's start at the very top of the list with first-person shooter games. You guys can see I never bought a Battlefield game, and I've detailed this on my channel plenty of times. Was Battlefield 3, 4, Bad Company, none of them. Never got into Medal of Honor, never got Homefront or any of those Tom Clancy games. You know, some of them were third-person shooters, some of them were first-person shooters, you know, the Rainbow Six, Ghost Recon, or whatever the fuck. And I've said this plenty of times, but I prefer the controls of Call of Duty compared to all those games. It doesn't mean that Call of Duty is a better game, it just means I prefer the controls and the style of Call of Duty compared to those games. I played the demo for almost every single first-person shooter game that at least offered a demo. I played the Bad Company demos. I played the Battlefield 3 demos. And of course, you guys saw all the videos I did for those. Oh man, to this day, people are still crying about Battlefield 3 in that demo video. That I ain't getting into that shit, man. I also played the Homefront demo. I played the Rainbow Six demo for one of those games, whatever the fuck I did. But when it comes to Battlefield games, and also you can throw in Homefront in this motherfucker, I hate vehicles that are available on the maps at all times. You know, Homefront gave you shit for just fucking dying 10 times in a row, whatever the fuck it was. So it was quite annoying being killed by a tank or a plane or a chopper or whatever the fuck by somebody who's going 4 and 13. I mean, think about it. I said that in Call of Duty World at War about how much I hated vehicles in that game. And only a few maps had the tanks. Now imagine Homefront or Battlefield where basically every single map has some kind of vehicle that could actually kill you. That is just not my flavor of gaming. Medal of Honor looked way too similar to Battlefield because DICE helped Danger Close make the multiplayer game. So that didn't appeal to me either. I've never been a fan of DICE's online logic, so I always skip their project. It's not that I don't like DICE, I just don't like their games compared to Call of Duty. Danger Close made the Medal of Honor games, but DICE's signature is all over multiplayer. They pretty much did the first one, and they helped on the second one. So I never got into Medal of Honor, I never got into Battlefield, I pretty much never got into EA's brand of shooters. So outside of Call of Duty, I never really got into other military-based shooting games. Dead Space, oddly enough, it was started by the current head of Sledgehammer Games, Glenn Schofield. You know how well that must have worked out. When it came out, it looked okay, but as I've said countless times, I never get scared of games that went boo. It just doesn't work for me. You know, Resident Evil and Silent Hill were games that I played, but only Silent Hill 2 really gave me some actual scares up in this motherfucker. So when the reviews said that the enemy variety was lacking, yet the scares were the best part, I hesitated on getting the game. The best parts are scare tactics that won't scare me. So why would I play the game if the best part isn't going to be something that appeals to me? Plus, Resistance 2 was on the horizon. So when you consider a game that got a brand new demo in Resistance 2 that I absolutely love compared to a brand new franchise in which I don't know is actually going to appeal to me because the best parts don't really scare you, that just didn't seem like a fair comparison. So naturally, I didn't buy Dead Space. Dead Space 2 was released a week after Mass Effect 2 and Little Big Planet 2 were released along with that free game that I got that day, Heavy Rain. So I figured if I have time for the game, I can always come back to it and see if parts 1 or 2 were decent. But as you can see, I never got the game. By the time Dead Space 3 was announced, my interest in the series was lost and I never got it. It's a series I can say with certainty I will never be getting into. Saints Row, basically a crazier version of Grand Theft Auto. Personally, I'd rather just play Grand Theft Auto from Rockstar. I mean, after all, Grand Theft Auto is a parody of sorts of violent video games, and then Saints Row is a parody of Grand Theft Auto's parody, which makes it even more over the top. I mean, shit, for that, I'll just play the original, so that's pretty much why I never got into Saints Row. Far Cry, another shooter type game. Didn't get into Far Cry 1 or 2, so I didn't see a point in getting Part 3. I know it received a good portion of quality reviews, but again, I can't get every single game. The praise was for being an open world shooter game and whatnot, but when I watched the previews of Far Cry 2 years ago, it just didn't seem like something that I would be able to get into. Far Cry 3 also received high acclaim and released in the year that Black Ops 2 came out, so that was the absolute perfect time to buy that motherfucker. But since I never really got into the first two, which have completely different stories by the way, I never got that one either. Now Far Cry 4 is coming up, but also it's again a completely different story from the prior games. So it's not like I need to play any of the prior games just so that I can play Far Cry. But with Destiny coming out, I'm also going to be skipping Far Cry 4. Basically, I'm going to be staying on the games that I know and that I like, and I'm going to skip the ones that I haven't really gotten into. A couple of other series that I just couldn't get into with the XCOM series of shooters or whatever the fuck in their series of games. Yeah, the Hitman games, Ratchet and Clank, which for some reason I never got into, even though Insomniac, who knows how to make damn good games, they make Ratchet and Clank, but for whatever reason I never got into that motherfucker. Dishonored, Mirror's Edge, they're also games I just couldn't get myself into. Now, were these games enjoyable for people that got them? Sure, but as I said, there are just certain games you have to skip, and I just can't play every single game. I have to find places to cut out and save money at some point, so some of these games just never make it into my collection. Now, as the video switches over, the next game in the background is one of the very few I have ever posted on the map Whiteout. Oh god, I avoided that shit like the projects at nighttime. Oh god, fuck this map. Anyways, in the video, I'm going to steal a care package very early from a noob not paying attention, and basically take his kill streak on a tear throughout the game for the next 15 kills. Yet, after it's over, I can't kill shit. It would have been a fun commentary, but again, I just never got to this joint. Portal, another genre that just doesn't do it for me. I like puzzles in my games, well, with the exception of that Resident Evil type shit. You know what I'm talking about? The blue key unlocks the red door that has the yellow diamond that fits into the green statue's vagina, so it pisses out Aquamarine Joe's, oh, get the fuck out of here with that bullshit. But even so, I like puzzles and games to break up the monotony. What I don't like is entire puzzle games. Regardless of the quality of Portal, I would never get into a game that's based entirely on a puzzle. It would just start to piss me off as soon as I get into this motherfucker. So Portal 1 and Portal 2 were skipped based on the fact of the genre I would not get into. Dragon Age is another series that I skipped. For starters, it released 1 week before Modern Warfare 2, so that certainly wasn't going to be a game that got a lot of playing time. But Dragon Age came out before Mass Effect 2, so I hadn't played a BioWare game yet on PlayStation 3. Obviously, Mass Effect 1 was a major blockbuster franchise, but at the same time, the group who made Mass Effect were not making Dragon Age, so I didn't know how good the game would be. Yes, BioWare had their name on it, but a different team was working on the motherfucker. And then releasing the week before the biggest franchise at the time, I was sure I wasn't going to get too far into that game, so I opted to skip it. When Dragon Age 2 came out and the reviews were somewhat mixed, at that point I skipped the series and have no interest in getting back into it. I'll stick to BioWare's main franchise, Mass Effect, but as for Dragon Age, including the upcoming one, no, skipping those, have no interest in playing them. There were also a number of games that brought back some of the old fan favorites that have spanned across consoles for generations. Even like fucking arcade games, man, like Street Fighter. Oh man, I remember the amount of hours I could spend kicking the shit out of people in Street Fighter. But when it came to the console version update, I just wasn't interested. You know, at some point, my taste for fighter games was lost. So games like Street Fighter, Tekken, Mortal Kombat, they eventually waned on me. So when this game was announced, I lost interest. Part of that is the oversaturation of fighting games that we have on the market. You know, with Marvel vs. Capcom and Mortal Kombat 113 or whatever the fuck they're up to. You know, I remember on Super Nintendo, I believe it was, there was Street Fighter 2, and they had Street Fighter 2 Turbo, Street Fighter 2 Ultra Edition, Street Fighter 2 Extra Motherfucker Edition, Street Fighter 2 Girls 1 Cup Edition. Oh, fuck all that shit, man. It was just cash grabs, and that's probably when I lost my interest in fighter games, so I never went back to them, even though there were some decent ones on PlayStation 3. I just couldn't get back into it after all these games that just pretty much burned me out on this motherfucker. Tomb Raider was another game that I ended up skipping. For years, I played Lara Croft games, mainly for some digital titties. Oh man, everyone that played the game was hoping those nudity codes weren't just an urban legend up in this motherfucker. Well, aside from the hot coffee mod in Grand Theft Auto. But anyways, much like every teenage male, the fascination with Lara Croft was always her amazing figure. So naturally, I played those games, and they were pretty damn good games. Action, adventure, puzzles, platforming, it had a variety of shit. And the Uncharted series managed to take all those elements and wrap them into a movie-like production years later. But anyone that played enough Tomb Raider games knows the content got stale. The games became either mundane or filled with an extraordinary amount of bullshit to have to avoid these games feeling the same. Essentially, the series ran its course, and Tomb Raider games lost their edge. So I started skipping the games and I never really got back into the series. But when a reboot was announced, I thought it could be something decent. I thought it might help the series or whatever the fuck come back to life again. It also came out at a time I was in need of games, as I was still playing Mass Effect 3 and waiting on games like Bioshock Infinite and whatnot. But in the end, I decided to skip it even with its good reviews. You know, there's really no good reason as to why I decided to skip the motherfucker other than it being just another game that from my past that I outgrew. It compared well to Uncharted, and it had a number of similarities to Uncharted, but I just never got it. And of course, I'm sure people are probably wanting to know what I think about the timed exclusive deal with the sequel, Microsoft and shit like that. Well, I won't get into it too much here. I'll just say it was a horribly confusing announcement that made absolutely no sense at all. And the decision to make it a timed exclusive is a bad financial decision in the long run for almost every single company. Microsoft threw Crystal Dynamics a shitload of money just so that they could have exclusive on their console for a year. And that's the thing. People don't buy consoles for just one game. People buy consoles maybe for a franchise, but for something that's a timed exclusive, no, they're not going to go out and buy a console just for that. It's not Titanfall or Halo or Gears of War, so they paid all this money just for time exclusive, and when the game does actually release, Uncharted is not going to be too far away. So basically, both companies essentially fucked themselves over in that deal. And there's a whole lot more that I wish I could say about that joint, but I'm not going to spend my time blowing my load all on Tomb Raider games. I have more shit to get into. Like my next game. Another game that eventually I felt like I outgrew. Twisted Metal. Oh man, I had fun with the original series, but like the other games that I've just mentioned, it went through a real dry spell of bad games. When they announced the new Twisted Metal game was going to be coming to PlayStation 3, I was mildly excited because it's a franchise that could have been done just a little bit better. Sony released a demo of the game, and after the demo, I thought it was pretty bad. Oh man, the racing controls were just off. I can't explain it. I don't know if it's playing other racing games, but it just felt off. The vehicles didn't feel anything like PlayStation 3 mechanics, and it really felt like a PlayStation 2 port of a game overall. So after playing that demo, I just didn't think it was worth my $60. So I skipped it based on the quality of the mechanics just from the demo. It never felt like a top-notch developed game. Moving on, we get to sports. And as I mentioned in sports weeks in my videos, I skipped a number of pro games. And my biggest reason for the games was receiving bad ports. On PlayStation 3, I never bought Madden, NHL, or NBA games, which is amazing considering the overwhelming majority of my PlayStation 1 and PlayStation 2 games are actually sports games. And as I said in those videos, when I feel the PlayStation version isn't a shitty port, I will probably return to those games. MLB The Show is probably the next sports game that I will get next year. And then after that, I'm going to evaluate which sports games are worth the purchase when they actually come out. You know, chances are the next year when Black Ops 3 or whatever the fuck Treyarch's next product is called, I'm probably going to end up getting 1 or 2 sports games just to keep me busy that year. So I have a feeling Madden, NHL, and NBA will somehow return to my console now that I have PlayStation 4. Now for the third and final gameplay that's coming up in the background, this is one I camp my ass off. Hey shit, I'm not gonna lie about it. I have a 3-burst MSBS, and usually when I play with burst guns, I slow my pace down looking for distance shots. Now, besides the camping and getting the minigun from a box, the funniest reason why I picked this video is because on the other team, there is a level 1 noob in the room. That noob is only going to get 2 kills. Guess who that motherfucker kills twice? Yep, I finished with the top score, camping my ass off, yet I can't kill a level 1 noob. That shit right there is Call of Duty logic for you. Now, one game that initially piqued my interest until I learned the details of it was Demon's Soul, a very highly rated game that received quite a bit of praise for making the game difficult on purpose. Die, lose all your shit, and the game becomes harder. The point was to learn from your mistakes and not make them again, to pretty much force you into playing careful and not run around without a care in the world just trying to get to the next checkpoint. Think of any first-person shooter game where all you need to do is get to the next checkpoint and hope you survive. If you fuck up, hey, you start over from that checkpoint that you just passed with all your equipment intact, and now you just need to be a little bit more careful getting to the next checkpoint. Demon's Souls eliminated that. Now, personally, I don't mind a hard game. But when the previews and the reviews stated that the game was rewarding, that raised my bullshit flag instantly. Oh man, almost every fucking review had that same logic. This game is so rewarding when you beat it. Really? What's the reward, motherfucker? It's more like relief from frustration that you finally beat something. That's not rewarding. That's called bullshit. Without playing the game and me having a bad temper and patience shorter than the attention span of someone with ADD, I knew this game just wasn't for me. I knew that the only thing I was going to get out of this game was frustration and anger. So I skipped it to avoid the headaches that this game would bring. You know, in skipping Demon's Souls, I also skipped Dark Souls for the mere fact that I didn't know it was 2 different games. No, really. I heard Dark Souls and I thought, didn't they just release this shit already? Then I realized it's a different franchise from the same creators. Whatever the fuck. Now, I know Bloodborne is supposed to be the next project, but it seems like a genre that I plan on skipping again. Mainly because it's part of these whole rewarding bullshit games that I will never fucking buy. But anyway, many of you may remember when PlayStation Network also got hacked, and as a result, we got some free games out of that shit. Well, one of the games that I downloaded and played that I never bought was Infamous. Another odd fact about this game, it's the last game that I actually rented from Blockbuster before that motherfucker ended up closing down. When I rented the game out for a week, I played it. I thought it was pretty decent, and I actually finished the game before the rental was over. I managed to get through the entire campaign fairly quickly and literally just beat the ending of the good side the night before I had to return the game. So if I beat a game already for $7, why the fuck am I going to spend $60 just to own the fucking thing, right? So when Sony announced that certain games would be free, I already had Little Big Planet, and I had a sub account on my console which was good enough to earn me 2 extra games, so I had a chance to download 4 of the games. I got the 4 games that I didn't have a copy of, which included Infamous this time around. And the second time I played it, I got to play the bad version of Cole. Overall, I thought it was a good game, but I was happy I didn't spend $60 for it. It's certainly worthy of the praise it received, but it wasn't anything that made me feel like I missed out on something amazing. You know what I'm talking about? Now, when the demo for Infamous 2 came out, they switched the entire orientation of how Cole shoots in the game. In the first game, you would see his right hand over his right shoulder, like any typical third-person shooter game. But in the sequel, they switched the orientation to right hand over left shoulder, or left hand over right shoulder. It was fucking disorienting, man. Since I thought the first one was only okay, I didn't get the second one, just based off of the shooting orientation alone. And the fact that I skipped the second game and now we have the Infamous Second Son or whatever, I decided I wasn't going to buy the Infamous series after that. So overall, I'm probably never going to get back into the Infamous series. I played the first one, I thought it was okay, not going back. Borderlands is another game that gets mentioned quite often. A number of people in the comment section keep saying how similar this game is going to be to Destiny in terms of content. The ability to do pretty much anything in co-op in a large-scale world where you collect shit from dead enemies, and it has almost any similarity you can imagine to Destiny. However, the comic-y style artwork just doesn't do it for me. You know, I said this in a Hipfire commentary video, but the game style is just not my style of gaming, man. The content is something I would probably like, but the over-the-top comic-influenced genre isn't something I'm into, so I would never get into Borderlands. It's not that I think it's a bad game, I'm just telling you right now, it's just not my flavor of gaming. Now, back in the Goodbye PlayStation 3 series, I had a whole week dedicated to comic games. Actually, it was only 3 videos. But the one game that I referenced was the Batman series, and I might as well mention it again. I know the reviews of the game were excellent. I know the game is one of the best comic book video games that have ever been created. But 2 major factors contributed to me not getting into the series. First was the fact that I like ensemble games. I don't want to fight as just Batman. I want to fight as all the characters in DC. Marvel games gave me that ability where I could play as multiple characters, so I wanted to play as multiple characters. With Batman, I don't get to play as Superman or Green Lantern or Wonder Woman or whoever the fuck else they got. So the appeal of the game relies on one character, but as fun as Batman is and as cool as the game is, the simpler Marvel Ultimate Alliance games appealed to me more. Now, the second reason is Batman would happen to release in the same year as Infinity Ward Call of Duty games. Modern Warfare 2, which I detailed how long I played that shit. Modern Warfare 3, which I said how fucking stupid that shit was to play. And by the time I got to it, Origins, and I just wasn't about to jump into the series up in this motherfucker. Although, I have jumped into series midway through and not from the start. Usually that occur with franchises that span different platforms. You know, like Fallout 1 or Fallout 2 not being available on PlayStation consoles, or Call of Duty being available on PC first. But a series on the same console? Not happening. After I missed the first 2 to play Modern Warfare 2, which I do not regret, and then Modern Warfare 3, which I damn near regret. Oh, that fucking game. I just wasn't going to get into the third of it for the fuck of it. So, unfortunately, as great as people want to say the Batman series is, I'm not getting it. And this brings me to the final group of games from Rockstar, LA Noire and Red Dead Redemption. LA Noire was just a game that didn't interest me from the start. Yes, it comes from Rockstar, but just because a studio puts their name on something doesn't mean I will buy it. If Naughty Dog ever released another Jak and Daxter game, I wouldn't run out and get the motherfucker, even though it comes from Naughty Dog. So from the trailers to the previews to the biggest comparison being made was that this game was going to be similar to Heavy Rain, and considering how long it took to get into Heavy Rain and actually play it, that shows my interest in the genre just isn't there. I elected not to get LA Noire based on the fact that it's a genre I probably wouldn't have liked. Red Dead Redemption is another story. For starters, I've never been into westerns and all that crap. Never got into Clint Eastwood movies or John Wayne movies or whatever the fuck. So when the game was first announced, even by Rockstar, I wasn't interested. It also released at a time when I had taken my break from Modern Warfare 2 to play other games, and then came back to complete all the challenges while recording footage for my newly active YouTube channel. So when the game released, a large portion of my friends went to play this game because that was their needed break from Modern Warfare 2. But I was just getting back into Modern Warfare 2, so I ended up playing alone while others ventured off into the Wild Wild West for their fun. Oh man, I remember a friend of mine, Krusty, posting a video of him chasing down a bear or something. I don't know what the fuck it was, but all I know is that he was running after a fucking bear, knifing it, punching it, doing something. I can't remember what the fuck it was, but that was one of the funniest fucking videos I've ever seen. But in any event, as for the game itself, it was loved by many reviewers. It sold well, of course, and being a Rockstar game, it was praised for its campaign and the open world that they created. But being the genre that it is, it just never appealed to me. Now, a few months down the road, when Mass Effect 2 and Little Big Planet 2 released on the same day, I mentioned there was a promotion at my Best Buy to buy 2 games and get a third one for free. I ended up with Heavy Rain, but initially, I wanted Red Dead Redemption. Red Dead Redemption was one of the games that they made available, but unfortunately, they'd already sold out of the motherfucker. People took all the fucking free copies before I got there, but had it been on the shelf that day, I would have gotten it. But instead, I ended up with Heavy Rain, and we all know how long it took me to play that motherfucker. So of all the games I mentioned in this video, this was the closest one that I actually came to buying. While everyone else was playing it, enjoying it, chasing bears in the fucking woods, I was still working on Modern Warfare 2, so I had content to post for my brand new YouTube channel. So in the end, I never ended up getting Red Dead Redemption, and it's one of the many games that I ended up not purchasing and saving myself money all these years later. Hey, like I said, man, I'm a cheap motherfucker, man. So for all of you who wondered about certain games, or why I didn't choose certain games, or why I didn't play certain games, now you have an idea why. And I'm sure there are plenty of other games out there that wasn't mentioned in this video, but chances are the exact same reasons we heard in all these videos will apply to those videos as well. Now, speaking of Rockstar, guess who kicks off the final week of the Goodbye PlayStation 3 series tomorrow? Yep, I am ending the video with a Rockstar game, and I'm also going to be starting the week with Rockstar's crown jewel. So as always, rate, comment, subscribe, and all that good shit. And tomorrow, we get Rockstar's best-selling game of all time.